My story about the 1967 bushfires is more a history from being a young bloke living on a farm and then experiencing what happened during the fire when I wasn't there and when I come home. I was born and bred at Levendale, which is a farming area 50 to 60 kilometres north of Hobart. It's a farming area with a lot of bush around, and I went to high school when I was 13, and I was boarding at Newtown High School on the day of the 67 bushfires. I clearly remember on that day that there was a lot of smoke around, it was very windy, and somewhere around midday all the teachers went around and told everybody to go home. Well, we were at the Springvale Hostel, so we naturally went up to there, and that afternoon we had no idea what was going on. It was just a lot of smoke, a lot of wind, and that night word sort of filtered around the boys that there'd been large fires virtually all over southern Tasmania, and a lot of the boys lived in farming areas, so their properties were fairly affected. I had no idea at that stage whether ours had been affected or not, and it probably wasn't until a couple of days later that I had a phone call from Mum, I think, to say, yep, the fires had been very close, but I'd got them out, but my grandparents had been burnt out, as well as the local shop. It was probably a couple of weeks before I ended up getting home, and travelling home from Hobart to Levendale, a lot of destruction all the way to Lake Charlie's, and then once we got to Levendale. One of the problems around Levendale at that time in relation to the fires was that it was country week, cricket week, and a lot of the men had come to Hobart to play cricket. So on that day there was not as many around as there normally would be, and most of those were out fighting fires in and around Levendale. My grandfather and grandmother's place and my uncle's place, my uncle had just returned from Vietnam, and my grandmother, she was 74, my grandfather was in his mid-80s. They luckily escaped with their lives with a few things in their arms, and I clearly remember my uncle going crook at my grandfather, and that he dropped one of his leather Blunston boots, and the boot got burnt. So they come to live with us, my mum and dad, for months and months until a shed was built, and then they moved back into that. Certainly a devastating time for everyone in the area. The local shop went as well. The school at Levendale, the kids there, they were evacuated to the Oval, and while they were sitting on the Oval, the fire was burning all the way around them. So it would have been a very terrifying event for them. And as funny as it may be, I've spent the last 44 years fighting bushfires. Always been in the bush, and bushfires is part of my life. But those fires then, to see the destruction that they caused, certainly something we don't want to see again, and hopefully we won't.